Insights can often come from the strangest of places. Some of the most illuminating and helpful pieces of financial information I've ever stumbled on have come from places that are entirely unrelated to the field of personal finance. With that in mind, today I'm going to be launching a new mini-series on the channel covering some of those insights, where I came across them, and what makes them so potentially helpful to our finances. The best tip I've learned for handling money is to start by picturing where you want to end up. This advice comes from a famous book called The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey. Knowing exactly where you want your money decisions to lead you is super important. Without this clear goal, it's like throwing darts blindfolded and hoping to hit the target. Sure, it might work sometimes, especially for short-term stuff. But for big goals like buying a house, retiring comfortably, or even building a career, it's not very dependable. Let's say there's a guy named John trying to make a budget. He could do it in a bunch of ways. He might list every single expense he has and track them all carefully. Or he could divide his expenses into a few groups and set a certain amount of money for each. Maybe he doesn't make a budget at all and only spends the cash he has. Some people put saving money before anything else, called a reverse budget. Others choose to spend based on what matters most to them. There are different ways to handle money, but each has its own pros and cons. One way is to use a detailed budget where you keep track of every single cent you spend. This can be super helpful because you know exactly where each dollar goes. It's like making sure not a penny is wasted. But this type of budget takes a lot of effort to set up and keep going. You have to keep an eye on every single expense, which can be a bit of a job. Another option is to split your money into different categories and assign a percentage to each category. This can prevent you from overworking yourself like with the detailed budget. However, it's not as precise, and you might not be as aware of where all your money is going. Sometimes, when using this method, you might think it's okay to spend within the limits of each category without worrying too much about what exactly you're spending on. As long as you're not going overboard in any one area, it might seem like it doesn't matter much what you spend within those categories. In some cases, that might be true. If you're not overspending in any category, it might not be a big deal what you're buying. But it might mean you're not making the most of your money or making choices that could help you reach your financial goals faster. What if we don't plan enough for the future? Take John, for example. Imagine he only sets aside 5% of his money for saving, or worse, forgets to save altogether because it slipped his mind when he was sorting out his spending categories. Right now, life might be great for him, but a few decades later, he might realize he's in financial trouble. He'd either have to tighten his financial belt a lot to catch up, or take risky bets with investments, hoping to make extra money. But risky bets can easily go wrong. Reverse budgets aim to solve this problem by making sure you always prioritize saving for the future. When savings decisions are automated, these budgets work well for many people. However, there's still a risk that you might not set aside enough money for your future needs. Also, there's a temptation to temporarily lower your savings to deal with more urgent issues in the present. If these adjustments are occasional and short-term, it might not be a big problem. But sometimes, temporary stretches out much longer than we admit. The key is to be mindful of our future needs and not underestimate them. If we consistently save a portion of our income, even if it's a small percentage, it can add up over time. Automatic savings can make this process easier, ensuring that we pay ourselves first before dealing with other expenses. It's crucial to resist the urge to dip into our savings for short-term fixes, as this can jeopardize our long-term financial well-being. John has a decision to make about his budget, and it's not a simple one. There are different ways to go about it, but each has its own issues. So, what does John want to achieve with his budget? That's the key question. Once he figures out his ultimate goal, he can use that information, along with knowing a bit about how he deals with money matters, to find the best approach. Let's say John has a tendency to spend money on a whim. In that case, making sure he pays himself first could be a smart move. It won't magically solve all his spending habits, but it's a good start. On the other hand, if John is facing tight finances or is short on time, a comprehensive budget might be the way to go. This type of budget is good at squeezing every bit of value out of the money he brings in. However, if John tends to procrastinate on money-related tasks or finds money matters uninteresting, diving straight into a detailed budget might not be the best idea. Many people share this sentiment, and it's understandable. Starting with a comprehensive budget could overwhelm him, causing him to freeze mentally or emotionally. It might seem like too much effort to set up and maintain, and he could end up deciding it's just not worth it. The second thing that has helped me a lot with my money is keeping things simple. Money stuff can get really complicated, more than we actually need it to be. People often say that when they check out simple money advice like podcasts, videos, or books, they don't learn anything new. They're like, oh, they're just talking about basic money stuff, like spending less than you make, saving regularly, and managing debts. I already know that. It's not that they think the advice is bad. They just want more ideas, more tricks, and maybe more fancy-sounding stuff, even if they don't say that part. I get where they're coming from. There are loads more we could learn to make our money situation super fancy and optimized. But here's the thing. You don't need to know a whole encyclopedia about money to do pretty well. Sure, if you want to be like mega rich and have the ultimate perfect money life, you might need to know a ton. But studies on super wealthy folks show that there's a point where learning more doesn't make a huge difference. For most of us, keeping it simple works wonders. Like, spend less than you earn. That's a biggie. Then there's the idea of regularly putting money into your savings or investments without stressing too much about the timing. Just keep it steady. Oh, and making sure your debts don't spiral out of control is smart too. These things might seem basic, but they're like the foundation for a solid money life. Going beyond these basics might not give you a huge extra benefit. For most people, working super hard to reach that perfect spot in life might not be worth it. Even if you could guarantee getting there after all that effort, which you can't, there's lots we can't control. Plus, we change as we grow up. What we thought was perfect once might not seem that way later on. But don't worry. The important stuff for a good financial life doesn't really change much. If you can find a way to spend less than you earn without feeling stressed, and you're smart about big expenses like houses and cars, that's a huge step. Also, if you can stick to an investment plan that's simple and has worked well for a long time, and if you keep your debts low or even pay them off, you're likely to be in great shape, money-wise. Honestly, you'll probably be better off than just okay most of the time. Throughout history, a regular person who saves money, invests wisely, and avoids big debts has fewer ways things can go wrong. Of course, there are tough moments like messy breakups or sudden health issues that can make life harder. But even then, for this kind of person, it's usually not a disaster. On the other hand, someone who tries to make things too complicated might end up taking big risks. For them, things can either go really well and they become super rich, or it goes the other way with bankruptcies or even worse outcomes. The thing is, most of the advice your grandma gives about money still holds true today, even if some details have changed. And I think that's great because it means that anyone, even if they're not super into learning about money, can still achieve financial success. If the rules for success changed all the time, only experts spending all their time studying finances could make it. But since the rules change slowly, it's easier for regular people to catch on and succeed. You don't have to be a financial genius to make it work. You just have to stick to the basics. Save, invest smartly, and don't get caught up in too much debt. Imagine building a strong, sturdy house. If you follow simple, time-tested rules, your house won't collapse easily. But if you try some fancy, risky construction, it might turn out amazing, or it could fall apart completely. The third tip that's really helped me handle my money better is about waiting before buying things I don't urgently need. My dad taught me this when I was young. If I want something that isn't urgent, I should wait a week. He said, if after that week, you still want it as much as you did at first, go ahead and buy it. But if not, congrats. You've avoided regretting your purchase. It's a simple idea, but it's been a game changer for me. I've even called it the best money advice I've ever got. Not because it saved me the most money, but because it does something equally important. When it becomes a habit, it stops you from buying things on a whim. That makes budgeting and planning your money much easier. Plus, it makes you less likely to fall for advertising tricks that create an urgency to buy things. When you combine those benefits, it's hard to measure exactly how much money I've saved, but it's probably a lot. The simplicity it adds to my money life is worth a ton. I've found that waiting a week before buying something makes me really think if I truly want it or if it's just a passing desire. It's like a shield against impulsive spending. And you know what? It works. It helps me avoid those moments of thinking, why did I even buy this? And feeling bad about it later. This waiting trick has become my secret weapon against buying stuff I don't need. It gives me time to decide if it's a smart buy or just a passing fancy. And most times, it's the latter, which saves me a lot of money and stress. So those are the 3 important money tips that I found really useful in handling my finances. I'm planning to make more videos like this, so if you have any tips that have worked for you, please share them in the comments. Your advice might even be featured in an upcoming video. That's it for today. If you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and hit the bell icon to get notified of new videos. Thanks for watching.